Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Journey with Suratul Hajj. Alhamdulillah, we've taken some amazing lessons in this episode. If you've missed anything, inshallah, you can go back on our Eman Channel website, or you can go on our YouTube pages and recap and follow us, inshallah, with this beautiful journey. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh, we've taken a lot of lessons. And in the last episode, I remember we were talking about how Allah told us to take lessons from civilizations that were there before. Some the ruins are still there, and some we know of, but they're not there. Like, for example, Nuh alayhi salam, his people were flooded, but there's no remembrance. But we know about Thamud, right? The carvings in the mountains and their civilization, their ruins. Can we just recap on the last few episodes before we take the new ones, inshallah?
Yeah, so what we had, Allah kind of gave permission for the Muslims now to respond back, to fight back against the oppression that they were facing. So then Allah talks about how to gain that establishment and take the Muslims out of that humiliation that they were facing, and how that is done. So He gives us the process and the actions that we need to do to get to that state. And then at the same time, He consoles the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims by saying, you know, there are going to be people who are going to disbelieve in you. Just like they disbelieved in the prophets before you, and then the civilizations, as you were talking about, I mentioned. And then at the end of that, we had the verse where Allah says, you know, don't they travel the earth and see those signs, those remnants of those ruins? And some of that was left, and you mentioned Thamud, etc., and their construction in the mountains, their homes. And then Allah says, you know, but it's not the eyes that become blind, it's the hearts. Because the point of seeing, when we went into that discussion, is not about seeing those ruins and marveling at them. No, it's about taking a lesson, and that is not done with the eyes, that's done with the hearts. So Allah focused on that issue. You know, the eyes are not the point here, the hearts.
Yeah, we spoke about that as well, didn't we?
We went into some depth.
The brain is something that processes,
yeah,
but the heart is the one that takes what's been seen by these like sensories, if you like,
yeah,
eye, feeling, heart, looking. But the heart is the one that takes all of that and then guides the person to
make the right decision.
How it is, basically, yeah.
Understand the reality and do something by processing that. If these people were destroyed and that's what they were doing, if I do that, the same thing's going to happen to me. And that was the point. And remember, this is a time where they're denying the prophethood. They're denying the Prophet ﷺ and his message, everything. And like the other nations, they did the same thing. They used to say to the prophets, and this happened to every single prophet. They said, okay, if you're truthful, bring the adab, bring the punishment of Allah on us. If you're truthful.
So they were trying to test.
Yeah, trying to push the buttons and say, okay, you're a fake, you're a fraud, because bring the punishment. And exactly that, Allah said in verse 47, وَيَسْتَعْجِلُونَكَ بِالْعَذَابِ. They're saying to you, hasten on the adab if you're truthful. وَلَن يُخْلِفَ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ. Allah is not going to break His promise. Allah is going to give victory to His messenger. He's going to give victory to the Muslims at the appointed time. It's only a matter of time. But Allah does it when He has ordained. You can't bring that forward, nor can you delay it. وَإِنَّ يَوْمًا عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ كَأَلْفِ سَنَةٍ. Allah then tells them that you see is something far away. But a single day in the sight of Allah is like 1,000 days.
Yeah, we spoke about that. So basically for us, it's a long period. Yeah. For Allah, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's not.
So if you think our whole ummah, it's only been around for
a day and a half.
Day and a half.
That.
Yes, remember. So we spoke about that, a day and a half. So this is nothing in the sight of Allah. So what you're coming to the conclusion that it has to come now, it's actually right around the corner.
We also spoke about, you know, when people or civilizations challenge the might of Allah, and we spoke about, for example, we all know the story of Titanic, right?
Yeah.
Known as the ship that is unsinkable by God Himself. Yeah. And this is how it got slaughtered not slaughtered. It hit an iceberg on its first journey.
Sunk on its first journey because of that arrogance, and that's exactly what these nations did. And then Allah says that, okay, there's many different civilizations, towns, societies, etc., that are oppressive, but we haven't destroyed them yet. We're giving them respite. So, and the explanation we mentioned that, you know, the Prophet ﷺ said, Yani Allah, inna Allah la yumli lil-zalim. Allah gives respite to the oppressor, whether a person or a community or a society, a civilization even.
Yeah, okay.
But what He doesn't do is forget about them. So what happens? Why does Allah give them respite? حَتَّى إِذَا أَخَذَهُ لَمْ يُفْلِتْ. We mentioned that, as the Prophet ﷺ said, He gives them this respite to let them give that rope. Remember you said, give them a rope to hang themselves. So
Well, that's the saying. I mean,
that's the saying.
That's the saying, yeah.
It's similar here. So that when Allah seizes them, it's been justified and there's no opportunity left. They've been given every opportunity, and that's what they're going to do.
So they've been given enough opportunity to change, right? But then there comes a time like, you know what, we've given you enough time for you to change. You're not going to change.
That's the cutoff. Okay. And that's the appointed time that Allah has set. And then Allah finished that section, وَإِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرُ. And you're only traveling in one direction. It's to Allah. You can't take another path. You're traveling and the destination is Allah. So that's where we got to. So you imagine the context that we're in right now.
Didn't we also say that, look, people do take different routes.
Yeah.
But those routes are,
the routes, where's the end of everyone?
Yeah, we said all the routes, all of them lead to Allah.
Yeah, because...
But which correct route have you taken?
Yes, so when I say it leads to Allah in the end, the destination means that everyone is going to die. Every person is going to die.
Yeah.
So when you die, what's going to happen? You're going to be brought in front of Allah, and the judgment is going to happen. So no matter what you do in this life, when you're born, there's only one certain fact, that you will die. And then there will be the resurrection, and then there will be the accountability in front of Allah.
Some say this is the two things that's guaranteed in a person's life is the wealth that they're going to accumulate and that they're going to die.
And we don't know how much wealth we're going to accumulate, but that's written.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the four things that are written for the person, every person when they're born. When they're in the womb, rather, not even when they're born, when they're in the womb. Yeah, so Allah sends the angel to write down four things. Ajalihi wa amalihi. Okay, so how long he's going to live, what he's going to do. Shaqiyun aw sa'id. Is he going to be from the people of paradise or the people of hell? Okay, what he's going to do, all of this is written, and his rizq, his provision, how much he's going to get, all of this is written while you're in the womb of your mother. Okay, because 50,000 years before creation, all of this is written in the preserved tablet.
This we know,
Right, so now we're at that point, right? Allah's basically given them a threat. He's given them, put it in context. Right, we're just giving you time. We did this before. Take heed. If you don't take heed, this is coming your way. Then the next verse. So let's have a look at the next verses, 49 to 51, where Allah says,
قل يا أيها الناس إنما أنا لكم نذير مبين فالذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم مغفرة ورزق كريم والذين سعوا في آياتنا معاجزين أولئك أصحاب الجحيم.
Say, O people, I am only to you a clear warner, and those who have believed and done righteous deeds, for them forgiveness and noble provision. But the ones who strove against our verses, seeking to cause failure, those are the companions of hellfire.
So here it's very clear, this is part of the warning. So here it makes perfect sense. A messenger, why is a messenger sent? What does a messenger do?
Yeah, okay, so the function of a messenger is to bring you the message, is to bring you some sort of news, right? And in this
so what does he tell the believers?
So in this instance, follow Allah, abstain away from what you're doing, which is wrong, and follow the truth.
And if he's addressing the believers, what would the messenger say to them? You're going to follow Allah, and then what would he say to them?
You'll get rewarded or you'll get punished.
You get rewarded. If you follow the messenger, you get rewarded, and if you don't follow, and that's the warning part, you're going to get punished.
Yeah.
So here Allah doesn't mention the glad tiding at all.
It's straight to
the point of warning.
Yeah.
So here Allah says, say to the people, directed at the Prophet ﷺ and then the ummah after him, say to the people, the only thing I am is a clear warner to you. Because this is in the context of a threat, okay, and punishment coming your way. So the other side of the messengership of giving glad tidings to the believers is not mentioned, okay, because this is the context. Whereas in other verses you'll find, say to the people, I am Bashirun wa Nadir, I am a giver of glad tidings and a warner.
Yeah.
Here it's about warning. Similar to Nuh alayhi salam, okay, when you find in Surah Nuh and other surahs like this, right? So the warning aspect is one of the main functions of the Prophet, okay, any Prophet. So when the Prophet ﷺ stood up on Mount Safa at the beginning of the revelation and beginning of the message when he's declaring it to the people, he says, I'm warning you of a painful torment from Allah. Okay, beware. And if you look at ourselves, we're shy to say this statement, although this is core to our message.
What do you mean we're shy to say this statement?
You know, it's not the done thing in modern times to make people scared of something that's coming. You know, you're meant to wrap everything up in flour.
Sugarcoat it.
Yeah, sugarcoat it and make people feel good. But that's not what the messengers did.
Or any of the other messengers that came before. They were plain warners.
Plain warners. You have to warn because the safety of people.
To be honest, this makes sense, right? Because if say for example, you're crossing the road, yeah, and I saw a car coming, I wouldn't sugarcoat it for you. Like say, there's a car coming, but you know what? If you stay here, you'll be rude. I will either push you out of the way or grab you back.
Yeah. Why? Why?
Physically.
Why do you have to? If you're not standing next to the person, you would shout to them.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be a nice phrase you'd use.
No, it will be completely aggressive, assertive.
Why?
To get your attention, to save you from harm.
Yeah, immediate harm.
Immediate harm.
And that's the way the messengers are told, because Allah's just said to us, it's a day.
So it's like the messengers can see, look, there is something coming.
Immediate.
You cannot see this. This is immediate. You stop.
Exactly.
Off.
They are very concerned.
Physically move you away. Right, okay.
They are very
All
concerned.
right.
So they want that rescuing to happen immediately. So that's the first thing you notice here. Then the direction changes.
Sheikh, we're going to have to leave it here because we're coming up to a pit stop, like I like to say, inshallah. But brothers and sisters, if you want to be warned, please join us straight after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Back, alhamdulillah. Sheikh, I want to go straight into it because we were talking, there's a lot here we will need to take, and we're talking about how the messengers were sent as plain warners, and they see the immediate danger, and that's what they're here for, just to warn us.
Yep. And then straight after that, it switches, because instead of talking about the threat and the punishment, Allah then said, فَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. He starts talking about what the believers are going to get. لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَرِزْقٌ كَرِيمٌ. He says actually the reward for the ones who adhere, they have the faith and they do the righteous deeds. Yeah, and we talked about that last time. So meaning that they have that sincerity, they have that conviction in Allah. They submit to the messenger. They do the actions that the messenger told them, the way he told them. For them, Allah mentions these two things, forgiveness. Okay, so that means any shortcomings are overlooked and pardoned. And then they have a noble, dignified, honorable provision given to them.
So
okay,
you know, in this incident, right? Being someone that is a believer, and then Allah says He will forgive and overlook everything that a person's done. I know we spoke about it in brief that believer being you believe in Allah, and then you have to do actions of a believer, and we spoke a lot in depth about prayer and how prayer is one of the things that you get questioned about. But the question I want to really ask here is, if a person is believing in Allah and he fails to do everything else, does he fall into this category that these things will be overlooked?
Okay, so here he hasn't come with the actual condition that Allah has stated. Remember, Allah said, to get this reward, you have to have these two parts. You can't just have one. Belief in the heart is not what Allah said. There's two parts of it. There has to be belief and action. If there's no action, we actually remember, if we go back to the hadith, there's a morsel of flesh in the body. If it is sound, the whole body will be sound. And we talked about how if the actual heart is really pure and full of iman, there's no way that won't manifest itself.
Okay, so a metaphor to use then, going back to a warner warning someone not to cross the road. And let's say, for example, you're stopping me. Let's say, don't cross the road, there's a car coming. Say, yeah, I believe you, but I still walk that way.
Yeah,
it will be like that, right?
Yeah, you don't really believe.
Okay.
Because if you believed what the person was telling you...
No, I believe you, but I'm going to take that risk.
So you're going to die.
Or dodge it.
Yeah, you're not going to.
You're not going to dodge this.
Okay, so here, the person really doesn't believe. It's a theoretical thing, or they're just making a statement with the tongue which doesn't have the conviction in the heart. Remember, belief is a conviction, a determined conviction.
So it has different levels. We're talking about iman here, right?
Yeah, and that iman which is just accept is not enough. Just an acceptance at a theoretical level and not a practical level is not enough.
So we're talking about theory and implementation.
Yeah, because if you look, Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet who defended the Prophet, he had internally an acceptance, yet externally he didn't utter the testimony of faith and he didn't enter Islam. Okay, that didn't give him the result which would be being saved Yawm al-Qiyamah. In fact, he's going to be in the hellfire.
Is it fair to say that, look, somebody, I'm talking about everyday Muslim who believe it, who they say, yeah, there is only one God, but we know the uncle of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he
didn't utter the shahada.
He didn't utter it. He didn't believe it. He didn't say it because he felt that his people would abandon him, or how he would look towards his people.
He would be humiliated.
Yeah. I'm talking about everyday people that, you know what?
Yeah, these people, remember, we went through that discussion. That
we did.
These people do certain actions. So they pray Eid Salah, they pray some Jummah Salahs, or many Jummah Salahs, and they give certain charity. Like I know many people who come in certain aspects of Islam, they are on it.
Yeah,
they are on it, really. They are really, really particular about those things. Some people, it's the riba issue. They would never touch riba. They stay away from that. They're very meticulous about their wealth and stuff like that. Some people, it's the issue of the nikah. They're very concerned about that. They will not overstep the mark in these types of issues. Some people, it's the salah. They may do lots of things, but they'll stick to that. So they do have some actions. So these people are under what we say the Mashiach of Allah, the will of Allah. He will punish who He wills, and He will forgive who He wills, depending on what other things they have done. And remember, Allah is the judge. But anyone who's committing any sins hasn't fulfilled the full conditions here. So it's under the threat of punishment from Allah. What Allah actually does with them depends on the weight of their good and the weight of their evil, and Allah is the only person who can judge that. So that's what's going to happen to them. But you notice here that it's switched. This is what you get if you believe, as if to say to the disbelievers, you have an opportunity. Come back. Do this, and it's all forgiven, wiped out. Okay, because this was the context of the warning. Then Allah says, however, those people who strive against us, okay, and the two different ways of reading this word as well, but basically it's still meaning the ones who strive against us and are there to only cause doubts about Islam. When there are no doubts, this is the crystal clear truth and it has the full evidence behind it. So what they're coming with is just pure conjecture and doubts to make people turn away from the truth. As for these people, they are the inhabitants of the hellfire. Okay, and the word used is jahim, a burning furnace that is so hot. So Allah says, this is what you're going to get. Then Allah moves on to the next ayahs. Let's look at the next ones from 52 to 54.
وما أرسلنا من قبلك من رسول ولا نبي إلا إذا تمنى ألقى الشيطان في أمنيته فينسخ الله ما يلقي الشيطان ثم يحكم الله آياته والله عليم حكيم ليجعل ما يلقي الشيطان فتنة للذين في قلوبهم مرض والقاسية قلوبهم وإن الظالمين لفي شقاق بعيد وليعلم الذين أوتوا العلم أنه الحق من ربك فيؤمنوا به فتخبت له قلوبهم وإن الله لهادي الذين آمنوا إلى صراط مستقيم.
And we did not send before you any messenger or prophet, except that when he spoke or recited, Satan threw it into some misunderstanding. But Allah abolishes that which Satan throws in. Then Allah makes precise His verses, and Allah is knowing and wise. That is so He may make what Satan throws in a trial for those within whose hearts is disease and those hard of heart. And indeed the wrongdoers are in extreme dissension. And so those who are given knowledge may know that it is the truth from your Lord, and therefore believe in it, and their hearts humbly submit to it. And indeed, it is Allah, the guide of those who have believed in a straight path.
So in this section here, the first ayah is very important for us because Allah is telling us that Allah sends down revelation to prophets. And this happened to many prophets. And there's this distinction here between the Rasul, the messenger, and the prophet. So this is something that's mentioned in this verse. But the main point being delivered here in this verse is that when the revelation comes, Shaitan tries, so this is coming to the prophet, Shaitan tries to confuse even the prophet in his recitation. So this is going to happen to a prophet, so obviously it's going to happen to us as well. And this is why when we stand up and sometimes we try to recite part of the Quran, and we know this part, sometimes we become forgetful and we mix it up and we get it wrong. So this was also the case for a prophet as well. Okay, and there's narrations maybe 2 or 3 times where the Prophet ﷺ made a mistake in his recitation. Okay, and then he says, this is from my human nature. I'm a human being, so sometimes I forget. So remind me when I forget. So Allah is talking about this, so Shaitan tries. And this is why Allah tells us as a command, before you recite the Quran, say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Seek the aid and refuge of Allah from Shaitan, because he's going to come and try to mix up and put doubt and confuse you into your recitation.
So this is why our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he used to practice with Jibreel the Quran.
Yep.
To perfect it.
To perfect it, and this is human nature. Unless you are close to the Quran and you continually practice it, you're going to forget. You're going to get confused.
This is an evidence for the how perfect the Quran is and how imperfect we are.
Yep.
Right? The perfection of the Quran and the wisdom that Allah has sent Jibreel to recite it with the Muhammad ﷺ over and over again so he can get it correct. But even then we make mistakes because there's no mistakes in the Quran.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Allah makes that point. So the Prophet and the Messenger, when he receives the revelation, Shaitan tries to come and confuse him, then he may try to confuse him at that point. But Allah says, ثُمَّ يُحْكِمُ اللَّهُ آيَاتِهِ. Allah will never let it go like this. So Allah makes sure the Prophet is kept on point when it comes to the revelation. So he doesn't make those mistakes. And then Allah goes back to His infinite knowledge and wisdom, the right place for everything. Then Allah mentions the different types of hearts that take on that confusion. So He mentions there's a heart that is very hard, it's full of disease. Okay? This one will take that confusion, absorb it, and run with it. Then there's another heart that is not that hard, but it has a disease in it. So sometimes it goes on the truth side, sometimes it goes on falsehood, whichever power overpowers it. Okay? So He mentions that type of heart. Then He mentions the third type of heart that is very firm, very strong, based in knowledge. They recognize the truth. This is a heart that's sincere, content with the truth. So He mentions these are the people who are firmly established in knowledge. So because of that knowledge, they can distinguish between truth and falsehood, and they adopt the truth, and they submit to the truth, and they are content with the truth. So Allah tells us about these three different types of heart. So if we run through them again, the best of them, the content heart, full of knowledge, recognizes truth, accepts it, submits to it. You had the next one down, which was the one that is diseased. Sometimes it goes with truth, sometimes it goes with falsehood, depending on which way it inclines at that moment. Then you had the worst one, which was the hard heart, that it doesn't accept truth and rejects it and goes with falsehood all the time. And then Allah finishes it by saying, Allah is the one who can guide to the straight path, and He is the only one who can do that. Upon the messenger is only to convey the message, but the actual tawfiq, ability to accept it, is only with Allah.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. We're going to stop here, inshallah. We're going to try and pick up on some of these points in the next episode, inshallah. Until then, brothers and sisters, please join us back on the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.